great to be here with you. I am Kevin. That is Joe. What's up, Joe?
What is going on, man?
It's good to be with you, man. I had an interesting week, dude. For context, our listeners may know 4 months ago, I separated from my wife of 24 years. And my kids are grown, 21 and 18. And let me tell you, man, what a process. We talk a lot in our conversations here about there is no playbook for the middle, and the challenge is asking bigger questions and taking some actions that may not always be leading to something else, but leading away from something that doesn't feel right. And my wife is a world-class human being. And there was no crime committed, as I like to say, all the typical reasons that, it's this news event when people separate. You have your whole dynamic of other couple friends, and like our closest friends are people we knew from when our kids are in like middle school. So it's kind of a shocking news event. And my wife is very social, and she, her way to deal with things and figure them out is to talk it out a lot with a lot of people and meaningfully. But and my instinct was to go inward, create space that I could control, and talk to as few people as possible about what I was going through, because and I wasn't trying to hide it. I wasn't ready to explore it. I needed to do all this in my mind. And so I moved a mile away, and I was able to sort of create this space. Obviously, the most important thing was my relationships with my wife, with my kids, certainly navigating all that. And but let me tell you, man, just from what I was going through internally, my process. So I spent 3 months in one place, and now I'm 1 month into my second rental. And dude, for the first week, it was like breathing through every minute of the day. Complete overwhelm, basically shut down. The sadness would hit me for the first 3 months in the strangest places. Like, it killed me, dude, like the grocery store. The most mundane task of running in to grab dinner. I think it's because it's a thing I always did with other people in mind. If I would go to the grocery store, I had a list of things to get, and now it was just, what do I need, right? And my fridge only contained things that I was actively eating. There was no, you know what I mean? It's like, and
I thought you were going to say it was because of the prices, but
there's also that,
yeah, you're like, oh my God.
Well, I did like become very domesticated, which was interesting. Like my space, dude, was so important to me. I loved the routine of like cooking my food, doing the dishes, cleaning everything. And I would get excited when it was time to buy toilet paper again, because I'm like, oh man, I haven't bought toilet paper in 5 weeks, because it lasts now. Little weird shit like that. So I just want to document this a little bit for men who may be faced with this. Certainly, if it's something you feel compelled to do, I've been referring to it as Operation Separation, because that's what it was for me. I had no idea the outcome. I only knew the only way my wife and I had a chance to get anywhere was to look at what we have from a distance, even a 1 mile distance, and it's been very effective for that, for both of us. And so every month would get a little easier. I'd feel a little more like myself. In that first 2 months, Joe, my savior was obviously some close friends. You and I spoke a lot about this in the time, um, but music
Oh yeah.
for me is always the thing. And I listened to two records over and over and over and over again. Tom Petty's Wildflowers and Leonard Cohen Live in London. Beautiful records to just listen to. But, you know, when you're struggling, and I wasn't thinking of it as grief, but I really was in grief. And you find so much meaning in every lyric you hear, and every, you know, it's really interesting. Reading those signs and deciding things you've heard 100 times. And with the Petty record in particular, I knew that it was created in a time in his life when he was in the same place. And so every little song is like a novella about a certain part of what you're going through as a man, as a head of a household, as a provider, as an artist, and it's just it's the soundtrack of
That's great.
Operation Separation.
That's what I was gonna say, man. It's the soundtrack of the moment in your life right now. Yeah.
Yeah. All this to say, and cut to, I think what'll be interesting to dig into is this process of the idea of like what I, 4 months to freedom, because this week is completely different. I feel like Monday I emerged myself again. Maybe we don't know with grief. There is no timeline. It's going to be different for everybody. But we can look for clues of this should be the, if you have a loss, if you lose a family member, it's like you can kind of maybe track what the stage you're in. With this, I hadn't dug in enough to what does it look like when someone's not gone, they're a mile up the road, and you've made this decision to upend their life. And you know what I mean? So you're still trying to hold on and do all the right things while you try to figure out who you are now, what this means to you, who you want to become. And I didn't have answers for any of that, dude. The hardest part was going, I don't even know what I'm chasing, but I need space to see how I feel about all this. And we talked about me moving back at least twice, and that was going to be the plan for a minute, a couple times. I think things that couples go through when they separate, you look to go back to what you knew and what was familiar. And now at this point, in 4 months in, I think we both know that won't be the case, and we both are confident that we'll be better people on the other side of it. And so the vibe here this week, I mean, if you asked me 2 weeks ago or suggested, people kept telling me, you got to travel, man, just get out there. Like now and I'm like, leaving the house was hard. I mean, even 2 weeks ago, the idea of like getting on a plane and going on an adventure was like, fuck that. Like I just need, and now this week, I feel like what I used to feel like when I was on the road as a comic, and I had a day off on the road. A day off on the road when you're in a cool place is the best, dude, because I remember like being somewhere in Virginia, and you can decide what route you're going to take and where you want to spend that night off, and you have no fucking agenda, and you just do whatever you want. And that's the spirit I've been in this week, just playing music and dancing around the house, and just wherever the mood takes me, that's what I'm doing, and then you and I had a really great conversation the other day, and I told you something my therapist said.
Yeah, we should have recorded that.
Yeah, that was a good. I think we can recreate it a bit, because he said to me, this makes sense because there are 3 reactions that people have when they're experiencing trauma. And that is to fight, fight, flight, or freeze. Those are really your 3 options instinctively. And was only fighting myself. I refused to fight my wife, even though occasionally that was how her sort of management through it wanted to manifest. So I didn't want to fight. I wasn't going to run away. So I froze and I felt frozen. But then you added a fourth F that I thought was really poignant, and that was flow.
Higher self, man. Higher
And
self, that's the ideal, right?
yeah. And you described it as, if you think about it, a river, a stream, there's a rock, and the water isn't stopping at the rock to, all right, rally around, everybody. What do? We have a couple options here. We have, there seems to be an impediment that just, it just goes around the damn rock.
Yeah, it still hits the rock. It just doesn't back up and then keep banging against the same rock.
Mm-hmm.
It hits the rock and flows around. And
Yeah.
that's just, because life keeps going.
Yeah.
Just because you have these things going on doesn't mean the whole entire world stops for Kevin and his wife. So it's like, okay, well, that's great that I'm frozen. But like that the rest of the world isn't. And there's still all, like you said, there's still all these things pulling on me, tugging on me. But also too, the other analogy that I was thinking about the other day is like, if you've ever been, to a river, the reason why the water is so clear is because it's always rushing and it's always in movement, right? And then you see on the sides where it can kind of get in little pools and it sits and that festers and builds up, algae and muck and all that stuff. So it's really the same thing with us. It's a really great analogy for us. And that doesn't mean, hey, don't stop and sit in my shit for a little bit, right? Because we also don't want to suppress.
Right.
You don't want to suppress, right? But having the instinctive, um, like exact nature behavior of freezing in that moment is perfectly okay.
Yeah.
It's a matter of, like you were saying the other day, you don't stay there.
Yeah.
And the problem is that a lot of people just stay and fight, they stay in flight, and they stay in freeze, and they never get back to flow.
Right.
And like you were saying, it's like you were, getting up and dancing and being in yourself and getting into the music and all that stuff. And it's like, even in a perfect dance, when you're dancing, you got to step backwards a couple of times and you're still in the flow of the dance. And it's really like the same thing. And I think that that's a fantastic place to be in, because then um, you're able to sit in that space of being stuck and recognize what it is that's actually going on, because it's life changing. You're saying, I'm this Kevin Rogers of the last 25 years. This thing happens, and now I'm this new Kevin Rogers. And it's like I'm transitioning into this totally new reality.
Right.
This totally new way of being, this totally new person. You have no idea who that even is.
Right.
So it's like, of course you're frozen. You're like, what the fuck is this? Right? Plus,
Sit in the
I
mud
think, but I think the most important thing that we discussed that doesn't get talked about enough, and you touched on it when you were going in on your lead, is that we don't treat the ending of relationships like this like an actual death,
Right.
because it's hard to, because the person's still there, right? So there's not the full on, I have to fully accept what this actually is. But to the mind, to the body, and to the soul, it is a death. And so all of the emotions, all of the thinking, and all of the things that happen are the same because of the death of that relationships, because it is a death. It's like
Right.
it's no longer, and it's been this way and this way of being for a quarter of a century. And okay,
Yeah.
but we don't talk about it like that. We don't discuss things like that, even though that's how the body, mind, and soul receives it. And
Yeah.
so, like, for when those things have happened to me, well, before I used to just get a bunch of whiskey and do a bunch of blow, but that doesn't work. Just in case anyone's wondering, the new healthy way of like actually experiencing life and emotions and closure and managing relationships in a healthy way, like this is what it is,
Yeah.
right? And it's like there's no handbook on sadness.
Yeah, but there kind of is for some things though. But none that you should expect to follow perfectly. But
Right.
again, there's so many books on grieving and all these, and um, even then, you know what it is. I guess what was interesting to me was I wasn't. I was going deep into Hollis and things like, but I wasn't studying grieving necessarily. I didn't, and that's part of the reason I wasn't talking about it much, was like I just needed to sit and ponder and let every sunrise feel a little bit different, and find my routines. That's that thing alone, just changing the rhythm of your life and your day is a trip, because for all those years you're in on a project, the most meaningful project of your life, and there's a rhythm to it, and so many things you don't even notice are routine, or how you think about things. Again, like going to the grocery store, I would call my wife 2 or 3 times from the grocery. Yeah, I'm going to Publix. Need anything? No. Okay.
Yep.
uh you know Make sure I'm calling her because I don't want to bring home the wrong damn spice, because and now it's just like I don't even know what the fuck to eat for dinner. I guess I'll have tacos again.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're right. And you build that up to be an unconscious competence of conditioning that you have. When I lost my dad, dude, for like 5 months after he was gone, every time I would get in my car, certain times, my mind would say, you got to call your dad.
Hmm.
Because I would always just get in the car and call my dad so we could chat, so I could catch him up on everything because he loved that. So I did that for so long,
Right.
but the mind had created those pathways of saying this is what we always do when we do this.
Exactly.
So then that doesn't stop until it
Right.
stops, right? So it's like you have this thing, but I think the I was looking at what Carl Jung said about this as well. He said the word happiness would lose its meaning if it were not balanced by sadness,
Yeah.
right? So like that feeling that you had on Monday where you feel free and happy again. Well, the reason why we're like able to feel so much of that is because of what the last 4 months has been.
Exactly
And
right.
so it's like for me, I know more than anything, I was perfectly content um being in my sadness because I wanted the psychological wholeness of life.
Yeah.
Right? Because one of the things of being an alcoholic or an addict is like, well, you just don't want to feel anything. You don't want to feel all the bad. But you don't feel anything. You also don't get to feel the happiness and joy, and you're just nothing, right? So for me, it's like I've always just now been, I want to experience everything that life has to offer.
Yeah.
And then it's like each time it's something new, well, then it's like I get to practice what it looks like for Joe to experience this level of sadness or this
Right.
level of grief or this level of joy or this level of anger or whatever. Right. And so
Right.
it's like those things are so important just for experiencing the full spectrum of the emotional experiences that we're having, because so much of me as a man, I want to suppress that shit.
Yeah.
It's like whether that's culturally or generationally, it's
Right.
like, nope, push down, push down.
Yeah. It feels like it's,
No.
it's something in our way that it's our job to get past.
Right. Rather than, right. It's to get past
Experience.
rather than
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
experience through.
Right.
Because it doesn't last forever,
Right.
even though
It-
sometimes it fucking feels
yeah.
like
And you know it won't. And so, man, it's just like rearranging your life in every way, and probably with the top priority of allowing for all that emotion. And none of it's fun. It doesn't feel good. It sucks. It's scary. All the ways you want to feel like you're violating another party who doesn't understand how you could not feel the way they're feeling, and you're not quite sure how other people feel, like your kids, 18 and 20-year-olds. My kids are full of wisdom, but very different in how they express what they're feeling, or that
yeah.
you never want to think your kid's trying to protect you and your feelings, because that feels completely foreign. But now we're adults, and maybe they are, and maybe that's okay. But how do I know? All these things, man. And on top of that, like you said, other shit that, we're both businessmen, and we lead teams and companies, and that ain't waiting on you. That's for damn sure.
No, nope. And I say that to everybody. It's not the client's fault.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry to say, it's the nature of business. Doesn't matter.
You got to get it done.
That doesn't, like, yeah, So again, same with the teams. It's like, sorry, like they need what they
You
need
could,
from us, and again, they're going to be supportive, and you can get some leeway, and you can be open if you have that relationship with your team. Which, if you're leading teams, I hope that you do,
you
because
do. Yeah.
people first and team members second.
Yeah.
But like you said, bro, money never sleeps.
Yeah. Some shit ain't gonna wait.
No. And also too, I'd say this, Kevin, is that I have had a lot of friends that then they just dove into a deep addiction of work rather
Yeah.
than really experiencing what
Yeah.
they were going through. So I would just caution a lot of men too
Yeah.
to like be aware of that. I know I can have a propensity to do that as well, is that it's like, well, I'm just gonna dive in and fucking work 14 hours today, and then like I can totally get into a zone
Yeah.
and world where I'm creating my own reality where none of that other stuff is going on. So I know I have to be careful of that as well,
Yeah.
and it's definitely takes some agility.
The week I moved out, I had a sales letter due for my own
Okay.
company that Monday. And so I
Oh,
moved, literally packed my shit on Wednesday.
well,
Thursday,
tell people what a sales letter
a
is
sales
first.
letter is a full sales argument in the written form that has many, many layers and different psychological approaches. You basically, it's like, imagine if you've ever done a sales call or been in sales, but you have to have a two-way conversation from one side to give everybody all the emotion and all the details they need to make a decision whether they want to buy your product. And as long as anybody's ever been writing sales copy, it just doesn't get easier. It just fucking doesn't. It requires full attention, full thought. It gets a little easier to write certain parts, but you're making a big decision. It's almost like, okay, we had an idea on the first, and we're gonna film it on the 15th. So make sure you think of everything, because after we film it, you know, and but I think that was helpful in some ways. But man, I couldn't wait to be done with that and have some space. And But I guess what I want to get across is, man, it, a big part of it, Joe, is like the work you do before an event like that,
Mm.
making the decision. And I'm not looking for, sympathy on this. It was my choice. But it's just the hardest, most unnatural thing. Again, and this is, we've talked about this on the show before. I think that's oftentimes why people cheat, is because they're looking to trigger an event that there's no going back from, or they just give into the moment or whatever. But how you lean into this concept that, man, I know we just need this separation and we both need this time. Um, it's just, there's no way it's going to feel normal or be easy, and you have to know that you're going into this abyss, that you're not going to recognize. Whatever you think it's going to be is going to feel different in its own way. I'm sure, that rental I was in for those 3 months, if I ever walk back into that living room again, it's going to be like going to see a fucking museum piece or something, like I left so much, emotion of myself in that fucking between those walls. And now here, also getting to just like have a space. You see in this frame, this room is slowly evolved, and I really needed something. I get to hang my shit now, Joe. Like all the stuff that means a lot to me. These are concert posters of shows I've been to, right? You buy the litho there, and
Oh
that's,
yeah,
dude,
dope.
that's a Ronnie Wood set list from the Stone show. The first time I took my kids to see the Rolling Stones, um, and it's like I had a very tiny space where it's like you can hang whatever you want in here, and I'm not, I understood, like, well, this is my aesthetic and what means something to me, and other people just, it's not going to fit what they're trying to create in their home, and that's another cooperation. But and now it's like, I don't care if that makes me look like I never got past 25, still hanging concert posters. That shit makes me feel good. I remember how it felt to be at those shows. And that's what I love to think about is music. And you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And so lighting, dude, like the lighting, I'm obsessed about. Like I have these, little flood LEDs and different, like, and it's just so fun. There's so many ways that you can create. So I would say to any man, if you happen to be in a situation where you're moving out and you're gonna, because you kind of have to get a furnished rental because you want to have some fluidity. There's a lot you can do with the space to make it feel like yours. You don't have to just, it's not a hotel room where you can't change anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Take the shit
Yep.
off the walls, hang the new shit with the sticky hangers so you don't, get have to putty shit up on your way out, and make it yours, man. And it's amazing. I think that's a big part of what you do physically helps instruct what happens to you mentally. When you're stuck and you feel trapped, and start moving your feet and take a walk. This, Joe, that your brain will not function the same in stillness as it does in movement. And you can easily look up the science to this. I just read more about it last week. But your brain, because you're walking and it's busy, occupied with navigating yourself and making sure you don't trip over shit and fall down, your brain has to process differently. And your vagus nerve is being activated when you walk. And so your full body is immersed in this, and then your thoughts can wander and solve things. This is why, we have great ideas in the shower, right? Because we're standing and we're washing and there's white noise. For me, it's always doing dishes. I love detailing my car because I always solve shit and come up with ideas, and because I'm physically doing something else. So little things like that. What you can't do is just sit there completely still and frozen. And I know that because in the moments where it was the toughest, that was the only thing I could do. I would pace around the living room going, I don't even know, am I hungry? Like I was, or I would just sit there and have to like breathe through the pain and confusion and all these things. And again, I'm not oh, woe is me. I'm just talking about the process I went through. And now on the other side of it, I realized there are things I could have been doing. I was still hitting the gym, 3 times a week and staying on that schedule and that stuff. And I would always feel better after the gym, things
Oh
like
yeah.
that. You got to just, but give yourself the space, but be, and, sometimes you just sit and feel, and other times you have to push yourself out of what you feel like you want to do and move. Just fucking move.
Yeah, my teacher Julio told me sadness is a station we stop at, not a station we stay at,
Yeah.
you know. So, but again, like the biggest thing too, man, is like what you were saying is that reminds me of what Hollis was talking about, where he says the largest task we face is to become free of our history.
Whew.
And that growth always requires stepping into the unknown.
That's it. Those are
And
the
so it's like, okay, like you're talking about all of these things of like now you're doing all these things, and what it takes for you. And I think the biggest thing that is important for us as men is to be on that level where we are asking those questions of like, okay, well, what is it that I want now?
yeah.
And what is it that's going to make me feel good in this space? And, again, because all of that programming from all that history that we have can, in some ways, create like all of the patterns that turn into like invisible prisons for us.
Yeah, man.
And if we don't take like all of that history and only use that history as learning rather than using it as doing what I always done to get what I always got,
Right.
then our present choices will always be shaped like that rather than saying, hey, excuse me, I'm going to step into this new freedom that's big, scary, unknown, uncomfortable, and there's a lot of fear. And for me, I know there's a lot of growth on the other side of that. Or I'm going to stay in what this current situation is. And it's like it's that same thing for midlife.
Yeah.
It's no different, right? It's the same principle. It's like
Yeah.
this is I've like Hollis says I have the first adulthood to build up my ego, and I have the second adulthood to let go of it.
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing. I've had this way of being for so long, but also too the biggest thing is like what I learned so much is that the only reason why I was in so much pain from the loss was it was directly proportional to the amount of love that I had for that person.
Mm.
Because like I was telling you the other day, people die every day.
Mm-hmm.
Relationships end every day.
Mm-hmm.
So how come for this guy, this one causes so much pain? Well, because of how much meaning it has to me,
Yeah.
right? So then that's why it is important, or at least it was for me to sit in that for a bit, to bow down in reverence to what that was to my life,
Mm.
and then transition out, not automatically just dive into the next thing
Yeah.
or jump into the next relationship or jump
No.
it, like
Right.
distract. It's like, no, dude, that amount of love I had and the amount of meaning that had to my life, well, that's the reason why I have so much pain. And so it's like, that's important,
Yeah.
real important.
Yeah.
But I'm also a big believer in move a muscle, change a thought, right?
Yeah.
It's like, if I can get up, well, first of all, the gym is filled with dudes in in breakups. Let's just be honest here. Like there's fucking some jacked ass dudes in the gym right now
Yeah.
that are, you know, a month or so out of a breakup and they're getting in the best shape in their life because they're
Right.
like, man,
And so are the women, by the way.
fuck
Yeah.
this shit. Yeah, women.
Forced. Yeah.
Yeah.
Diet.
So
Right.
it's like, so there's also that, but again, um, I think it's important for all of us to find the car detailing, to find the walks, to find the gym, to find the shower, to find the
Find
dishes, to
the
find
music.
what it is for us in our own life that we can have some sort of space for contemplation,
Yeah.
to have healthy assessment and awareness of like what the hell is going on with me and what the hell do I do with it, or creativity or ideas or whatever, to get myself unstuck, man.
Yeah.
um and that's not easy, you
And, and
know.
and people will give you all kinds of recipes and ideas. I think we talked about
Well,
it.
Kevin, you should be doing this.
Right. Here's what to do. Here's what
Here's
to do.
Yeah, here's what you should be doing.
Yeah.
And
And
and you know what my first thought is? Well, you should shut the fuck up. Just kidding. That's me in my own mind, but I'm not as good a guy
yeah,
as Kevin. We
but
already established this.
well,
But
I
my
do think that,
response isn't that. I'm like, well, thank you for saying that, but
yeah.
you know.
Well, that you know what it is, it's that filter. You have to develop a filter and trust your filter for what you're gonna
Yeah.
let in.
Yeah, I know, man.
And
That's it.
I, we talked recently.
Bad mentorship, bro, is
Oh,
just as powerful as great mentorship.
that's the truth, man. That's the truth. You know, we talked on a recent show about this idea of the conversations. Do you need to be heard, helped, or hugged? And
Oh, love
when
that.
you realize that somebody's giving you advice and they don't understand the conversation you're trying to have, you can forgive them, but it's a little like deflating because you're like, oh, now I'm stuck in this for 20 more minutes and I know they don't understand. They're trying to help, and I just have to nod and say, okay, yeah, that sounds interesting. And then go back to, so you know more than you think, and you have to, that's why I think journaling and thinking through stuff and like because you know you it can be deflating when you reach out to people. Not everybody has a Joe in their life. Yeah, and I'm fortunate to have a few Joes. But man, even some of those cats I which wasn't ready to talk with about it, you know. And so build a filter, trust your filter, find some people to talk to, read books, listen to podcasts. Like there's so much great information out there now. But I think the most important thing is what Joe just said is like you you don't have to just muscle through this and make it end. And again, if this is of your doing, rather than it being thrust upon you, the way you set it up and the work you do leading up to it will have a major effect on how it goes down for you. And so I recommend 4 to 6 months of space, plan to be there, and because you need that much time just to find your new rhythm of life, and then you'll begin to emerge from that. And so thanks for letting me document this, Joe. I want to get it down in real time because it's happening now, and as you know, a lot of the nuance of it will be forgotten in the feelings I had, which I'm kind of welcoming because grief, you do want grief to end, but I don't want to forget.
Yeah,
I don't want to forget all that I've learned and experienced through this.
yeah,
And
because
everyone around me.
we can sit here and chat it out and talk about everything, but we all can agree on that. Like sometimes we just want it to let up a
At the
little.
end. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me dance again. Yeah.
And then I read stuff from Hollis, and he says our wounds become our wisdom.
Oh man.
And
God.
I'm just like, oh, yeah, you're totally right. The most painful experiences of my entire life become
Yeah.
literally my most powerful assets to be of maximum service to other people in my life. And I mean, it's like, holy goodness gracious, because like you were saying, there's again, I have a lot of Joes in my life too. I have a lot of Kevins, I have a lot of Matts and Jays and Andrews and all of my good buddies. And like the thing I'll say, man, is especially like in our business too, the phone's always ringing a lot when you're up.
Yeah.
And when you're down and life is handing you some real life, the phone rings a lot less, you know? And it's in those moments you discover who are the people that are really, really with you,
Oh yeah.
right? Like you were saying a couple of weeks ago about our good buddy that I went and
Yeah.
helped for the hurricane.
Right.
And there's plenty of people that were calling him all the time, man, when he was crushing
When he
it,
was
you
rolling.
know,
Yeah.
and he's in this life changing situation and the phone's dead. And to me, I, I'm someone that I feel like it just should be the opposite, man,
I
you
agree.
know?
Yeah.
And, so, you know, I do want to end with this, Kevin, because we're talking about, you know, getting through grief and freedom on the other side. And I think I said this in a previous episode, so I'll condense it down, but I want to reiterate it that the most powerful thing that I learned in my grief journey of going through this type of stuff before was how important it was for me to allow other people to show up and love me.
Mhm.
Because I'm always willing to do that for others. I want to be a service. I want to help. We all want to be saviors. We all want to be helpful. Like you were saying earlier, everyone wants to be helpful and give you their unsolicited advice on all of these things. But the frequency at which people are saying, I need some help,
Yeah.
and hey, I need some time with you, or hey, I need an ear, is very low because again, there's this feeling of inadequacy or weakness or whatever. But in actuality, that's very selfish thinking, because when
Yeah.
someone calls me and asks me for help or advice, I feel privileged, honored that they requested that of me. And it's my
Mhm.
responsibility, if I want to build healthy relationships, to allow a space for others to sit in that seat in their life for me. Because I'm okay with not being okay. If I'm not okay in the moment, I'm going to be like, this is where I'm at.
Yeah.
And if you want to judge me and think less of me, fine, so be it. Doesn't matter. Right. But it's like it's okay to not be okay. But
Yeah.
what's not okay, and that we want to really get across, is that there's this sentiment in our culture that men are just living in a life of quiet desperation, they call it. And that's where men just lead themselves down a path that is a, you know, a permanent solution to a temporary problem. So I would implore you to reach out to your Kevin, reach out to your Joe and be like, listen, man, this shit is killing me right now, dude. And I don't know what the fuck to do.
Yeah.
What do you think? Can you help me here, man? Can you come cook a steak with me or something, bro? Because and then the funny thing is like a problem shared is cut in half, a joy shared is doubled. So it's like if I get that out of me, I just get immediate relief,
Yeah.
you know?
And it's not that you're looking for someone to deliver you the full answer. But I love that what you
Yeah,
said.
I don't
Just
I
cut
don't
it in
need
half for a minute and be able to look at it in a couple different sections.
yeah.
And you go, oh, I figured I get this
Yeah.
one. I recognize this motherfucker over here. I don't know what
Yeah.
you're doing. At least have some other perspective for yourself. And I think that's a burden that both parties sometimes, again, I think most people, if they do come to you, they just want to be heard. They don't necessarily want to be helped. They just need to hear themselves talk about it. And so if you don't know how to show up for somebody, sometimes you think it's going to be awkward. You know, you hear this all the time when somebody has an event and they don't show up. I just didn't know what to say. You didn't need to say anything. You needed to say, I'm here. Those are the only two words you ever need to say when a friend is going through something. I'm here. And mean it, because that all they probably need is company and someone to listen and to know that someone cares. They don't need solutions. If they ask you, if they give you a multiple choice of 3 things they're considering, well, now you're welcome to weigh in. But if you're just willing to be there and show up, that is the most meaningful thing you can do for somebody who needs your help. Or all you should be asking, like you said, come, I'm cooking steaks, man. Let's just have a beer and a steak and, you know, whatever it is. It's that simple, dude.
I'll end with this. Carl Jung says, no tree can grow to the heaven unless its roots reach down to hell.
Oof.
So it's a great metaphor for how to explain how that deep grief and suffering is often very significant for psychological growth over time. But you don't have to do it alone. So Kevin, tell them how they can jump on the Substack with us, the newsletter.
Yeah, we're here for you wherever and however you want to consume it. Of course, you have the podcast here, and we would love for you to subscribe, leave us a rating. That helps us a lot. And the Substack, Man in the Middle Substack. If you just go to Substack and search Man in the Middle, of course, this is always in the show notes. That is where we take reflections on these conversations from more of a written perspective, quick and easy to consume, but a little more intimate if you don't have time to hear the whole podcast. And of course, we want to hear from you. We would love for you to simply email us info@maninthemiddleshow.com and just tell us anything that's on your mind, because this is a dialogue. We're not here to talk at you. We're here to talk with you.
Love it, guys. Thanks for joining us. And as always, the biggest honor having you. And what you could do to support is share it with somebody that needs it. You know, the subscribing and the reviews and downloads and all that stuff is really amazing. But this is more about helping somebody else that is maybe in a position that Kevin and I are in, that we're talking about here. And this might be something that could help them, right? And maybe that opens the door to conversations that maybe have not been had yet, and they were needed. So I'm the type of guy that I don't want to feel like, man, I should have done that, or I should have done. So again, we appreciate you guys, and